today we have Erica Spindler with us, the author of more than 32 novels. She is an international best-selling author who has been on the New York Times best-selling list numerous times. She is published in 25 countries. One of her books became the basis of a daytime soap opera in Japan. I'd like to hear more about that. She has been called the master of addictive suspense and the queen of the romantic thrillers. So we have writing royalty with us today. Last year, I heard Erica speak at the North Shore Literary Society. She was promoting her latest release, The Other Girl, but she also had a new self-published series called The Light Keepers that she is writing to explore the concepts of good and evil. Well, 3 words caught my attention: good, evil, and self-published. Why would a successful author self-publish? The first one. And how are concepts of good and evil defined and explored through literature? Christians study God, absolute good, yet there are people who think God is not good. We study pure evil, the devil, yet there are people who worship him. I just read an article about the Church of Satan that opened up in Venezuela, and they had a big figure that they think Satan looks like parading down the streets toward the church. So how can people worship what is pure evil? According to the Bible, even 1/3 of the angels abandoned God to follow the devil. So it really is a complex and interesting subject. My first thought, this would be an interesting conversation for our group. And my second thought was, would an international best-selling author want to come talk to our little group? The only way to find out was to ask, and I'm not shy. So I asked, and she said yes, because she's here today. The format today will be a question and answer session. I will start the ball rolling with some questions. At any time, you are welcome to ask yours. But please do so on the mic that Ingrid is holding. Just get her attention, wave your hand or whatever, and if I see her walking towards you, I will pause in the conversation and let you ask your question. But we need you to ask them on the mic because we have out-of-state members who cannot attend. And if they don't hear your question, they're not going to understand what we're talking about. If you're shy and don't want to ask a question on the mic and you have a piece of paper, just write down your question and hand it to Ingrid, and she will ask it for you. So, let's see. Oh, and Erica told me she has considered entering the Christian market. I don't know if she will. She said she's considered it. So I told her that she is welcome to ask us questions as well. Let's welcome Erica. Come on up here, Erica.
Sit a little closer to you.
Okay. Okay. We're going to start with your career because I think this might be a whole bunch of new faces. And what I want to know is, did you write your first novel in your mother's womb and enter the world with manuscript in hand looking for a publisher, or did that come later in life?
It came later in life to me. I think I came out of the womb reading a book. I was obsessed with reading, and I think I'd be a little firmer adult now if I had spent more time out playing with the other kids all summer. Instead, I was, I like to just lounge with a book all summer long. I loved it. Got that love of reading from my mother. So I didn't catch the writing bug, as I called it, or I call it, until after I thought I was going to be an artist. That's what I studied for. I have an undergraduate degree in fine arts and then MFA in fine arts. And I got a really bad summer cold, and I went to the K&B drugstore to get Kleenex and cold tablets. And this was right before I'd just gotten a teaching job at Southeastern in Hammond to teach in the art department. And the cashier dropped a free romance novel into my shopping bag. So at the time, I thought to myself, well, I was a big reader. I hadn't read a lot lately because of, I was supposed to be making art and, studying and things like that. I almost told the cashier that to keep the romance because I didn't read romance. But I got home, I felt too sick to even talk. You know how you feel sometimes? I think Linda might know today. She doesn't really want to talk. I picked up that book. It was by an author named Nora Roberts. Anybody know Nora Roberts' work? Mm-hmm. Started reading, loved it, became hooked. started voraciously reading romances, started my teaching job, and as time passed, the more I read, the more I decided I wanted to write a novel. I wanted to try my hand at writing a romance novel. So when I finally got up the courage, because we all know in life it takes courage to step out in faith sometimes and do something that maybe there's another plan for your life. When I got the courage and started writing, I again was hooked. And I just didn't want to make art anymore. I taught for the paycheck, although I loved the kids. I did love teaching. And I had to publish a novel. I had to write and I had to publish. It's just like, it just consumed me, despite my entire family thinking I had gone around the bend. Because I'd studied all my life. I want to be an artist. I want to be an artist. I want to be an art teacher. That was what I wanted to do. So clearly someone had other plans for me.
I find I've heard that story a couple of times, and I find that interesting how God will use the most simple things to get us into His will. Sometimes, we're looking for writing in the sky, we're looking for a voice from heaven, and God will do something as simple as give you a free novel.
Free novel.
Right. I met my husband, who I know is God's plan for my life, because someone invited me to a picnic. And I didn't even want to go to the picnic. And when I got to the picnic, I wanted to leave because there was one family there and the family I came with. And this was a church of 6,000 people. I'm like, what am I doing here? But I was trapped. And then he drove up. So it's like the simplest things, just like with Erica. Somebody just gave her a free novel, and look what it did. And I was going to ask you if your family took you seriously at first, and you already answered that. Not really.
Not at first. Not at first.
They take you seriously now, I bet.
They do. They do take me seriously.
Well, let me ask you this. Once you decided that you wanted to write a novel, did you take classes? Did you formally study writing, or did you just start writing?
I just started writing. Well, I shouldn't say just started writing. I did get books on writing, how to write a romance, how to write a novel, I joined writers groups like this. I got in critique groups. I went to conferences, writers' conferences, met other writers, talked about writing. So I was just really on fire for writing and learning about how to do it. And then I wrote and wrote and wrote and got rejected.
I was going to ask you about that. How many rejections before you finally sold the book?
My first book is actually still in a drawer. It's Fatally Flawed, which I kind of nicknamed it, instead of its real title, which was, I can't even remember now, but I call it Fatally Flawed. Because I made every mistake a beginning writer makes. It's okay to make mistakes. You learn from them. We make mistakes. We don't pop out perfect, I still don't write perfect. I have to edit and edit. But I got rejected from the publisher and from agents I was trying to get too. So it was like, double teaming me on rejections. So I don't even know the number anymore, but every time I would get a rejection, there would be, either a little letter, even if it was a form letter, there might be something scrolled, a handwritten note, which in, aspiring writers code is, good. That's good news. Hang on to that. And I would try to learn from each comment, like, oh, the characters are cliche, let's say, or the plot doesn't make, and I kept honing it and trying to figure out. So I rewrote that first book at least a half a dozen times until I moved on. And I said, this one's just fatally flawed. It just had it was hinged on too many things that were hackneyed, cliched, whatever. I went on to my second book, which got several rejections, and while it was circulating, I started another book, and that third book sold. I acquired an agent. The third book sold, and then I went back. There was a lot that was good about that second book that were fresh, as they would say, fresh, and I rewrote it. I kept the setting, which was New Orleans. I kept the characters and their background, but I changed the plot, and then it sold. And it's one of my favorites. My favorite of the romances that I did.
And what was the title of that one?
That was Chances Are.
Chances Are. That was the
second one.
And how many years had you been writing? Do you remember before you actually sold the book?
Yes. Before I sold, 3 years.
3 years.
3 years.
Wow, that's short.
That is short. But I really was. I was really writing and rewriting and rewriting. Yeah.
You wanted to ask a question?
Hi, Erica.
Hi.
At the time that you did your first book and your second book, did you have anyone else critique your work, or did you just proofread and do it all yourself?
Okay, great question. Thank you. I did get in a critique group with some other gals that I met at a local romance writing group. A big thing that happened to me is two women from the group who were published authors already, they took me under their wing. And they were both published in romance, and we became friends, and they offered to start a critique group. So I started with them originally. I was so excited the first night we got together. I had my first chapter of that first book that's in a drawer that's fatally flawed. But I was so excited. I had that all polished up and ready to go. And they said, okay, just start reading. So here I am with these two published authors. I start reading. They literally said, stop. Just a couple sentences into it. We know exactly what's wrong with the book. I'm like, but there's lots of good stuff coming. And that was just it. There was lots of good stuff coming. But I had, the first paragraph, the first few sentences are really important. And I couldn't believe that these experienced, knowledgeable authors do that right away. I mean, how did they do that? But I remember going to bed that night and my mind was just whirling with the possibilities and the things that they'd said and where I could go with the story from there. After that, we didn't work. I mean, they clearly didn't need my critiquing of their stuff. And I ended up hooking up with a couple other writers who were aspiring and seriously pursuing publishing, and we would critique each other's work. And what you said earlier about, this group already, I can tell, has such a gentle spirit and such an uplifting spirit, maybe because there is the spirit here, that you do want a group, you want other writers who are going to lift you up. If you're critiquing, you have to find maybe what doesn't work. Why did this ring false or untrue to you when you're reading, or why were you not sucked into the story, or whatever? But there is a gentle way to say that, and it's always done in the spirit of love and helping. So it is very important to find people like that for your critique group, because I have seen, and heard of very destructive critique group if you have someone who
I've been in a few
wants
of
to
those.
harm and tear down instead.
Yeah.
But I started working with them, and we just kept honing our craft, and we had the fellowship of each other's company and joint goals, so
Okay.
good friendships.
That's interesting that you said there's a gentle spirit here, because the last meeting I started, I taught the art of the critique, and I told them that the art of the critique is gentleness.
It's gentleness.
See, God's confirmation.
There you go. Yeah, it's true. It is absolutely true.
Your bio says that you started as a romance writer, but switched to suspense in 1996 when you wrote Forbidden Fruit, and that you consider suspense your true calling. What happened that you switched genres?
It was just, frankly, an accident. Are there any accidents? We talked about that before, but I was starting a new story idea, and I had left category romance, which is like a Harlequin or a Silhouette, and I'd wanted to tell a bigger story, and I wrote a book called Red, which was like a big Cinderella rags to riches story about a poor girl from the Mississippi Delta, abusive background, runs away and ends up making it big on the West Coast in the fashion industry. So anyway, it was time to come up with another story, and that story had done real well, so I wanted to do something in a similar vein. But what happened is when I was planning the story, I just kind of came up with a character. The male protagonist was a New Orleans police detective, and there was a serial killer in New Orleans, and it was just a little subplot. There were a few conversations between cops, a little bit of a crime scene. So it was definitely a subplot. But when I was writing those parts of the story, I was having so much fun. It was just like it just was pouring out of me. So I wrote that book, and my publisher accepted it, and then it was time to come up with another story. And you guys are going to think I have an addictive personality, because I became addicted to writing and addicted to reading the romances. And then it was like, oh man, I want more of that. It was kind of like a big box of chocolate. So I decided to come up with more kind of that suspense, and explore that. And I'd read a lot of suspense and mystery and horror when I was a kid. So with each consecutive book, it was kind of like I wanted to get a little more of that, until, my work kind of formed this arc where I went from, romance with a tiny little bit of suspense, more mystery, more crime scenes, more, to very little romance, if any, and then started curving back down a little bit toward more relationship, which I do now again. Definitely suspense, though. Suspense and mystery.
Do you have a question? I saw you lean forward like, no, okay. Okay. You mentioned Red, and I read that Red was the one that was big in Japan and turned into a daytime soap opera.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us how that happened. And did they let you go to Japan and consult you when they were doing the soap opera?
Well, they didn't consult me, but they did send me to Japan. It was really kind of the most exciting thing, most out-of-the-box thing that ever happened in my career. And really, it was just a wonderful experience. My editor called me one day out of the blue to tell me that Red was being turned into serialized in a women's magazine in Japan in manga. She called it at the time cartoons, which manga has been huge in Japan forever, basically. So they had bought, this Japanese publisher for a women's magazine bought the rights to do that. So they published them, and I would get the magazines. They'd send me a little box with the magazines.
Were they
so
in
I could see what they
Japanese?
did. All in Japanese. All in Japanese. So I couldn't read them. I don't know what the story was about, other than I looked at the pictures and I go, oh, that's where that is in the story. I could figure it out. So, and it did super well. I mean, it just was just huge over there. So then the next step, she called to say, oh, it's so exciting. They're going to take all the serialized, parts and put them into volumes and, put them out as books, as volumes. So they did that, and it was really popular. So then she calls and says, you're not going to believe this. Someone wants to make that a daytime drama there in Japan again. So, and unlike the United States, where we can have days of our lives forever, in Japan they're limited. I mean, it's like limited runs. So they sent me over there when the soap opera premiered, and they sent me on a book tour over there, and it was the most interesting experience of my life. And publishing and book selling is very different in Japan. I don't know what it's like now, though, but back then it certainly was different, and it was really cool, really cool.
Okay. What was your biggest mistake when you started writing? Your regret? Do you have a regret?
Do I? I don't look back so much on mistakes as with regret, because I feel like I learned from them. We all make mistakes. You can't, you made a mistake. You're a human being. You learn from it and you go on. Maybe, like you say, God uses it another time.
Right.
You can share them with aspiring writers. Things. Yeah, I don't really,
Well, that's
learn
a
some
good
of that.
attitude to have. There's no
Yeah.
point in looking back. So
Right.
what was your best decision?
Oh,
What was your best decision?
okay, my best decision.
Something that really benefited you in some way.
I think that maybe the whole idea of following my muse. My husband says I'm a good businesswoman, but I really feel like I was more of the artist, in the sense that I followed what I loved. So I, loved that little bit of suspense, so I followed that. You know, I love the romance. So I following my dreams maybe too, following my muse, and then following my dreams in the beginning. That would have to be, you have to really believe in yourself and stay after it and work hard and love what you do. And I did that.
That's why you don't have any regrets, because you followed your dream.
I think so. I mean, and you follow your muse. So it's, I'm not looking back and saying, wow, I wish I'd written that suspense. But instead, I kept writing something like Red, because Red was didn't have any suspense,
Yeah. I think, Ingrid, you have a question?
Oh,
Okay,
hey,
that's
Ingrid.
fine.
I'm glad.
I have one question that's piqued my curiosity for a moment, and I said, well, why don't I ask her? What is it? Is there something that piqued your interest, or what turning point do you feel like you want to write in the Christian genre?
Okay, great question. Why did I what piqued my interest about the Christian Christian genre? Becoming a Christian. I didn't start out as a Christian. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. My family, my mom was a disenfranchised Catholic who felt very, very guilty about having married a man outside the faith, who was not only outside the faith but divorced. And so in the day, that was, that was pretty horrible. She never forgave herself for that, which I'm sorry about. And she never went back to church. She never found faith. My family kind of all talked a lot about the supernatural. My mother talked about the story. We heard a lot of stories in the Bible, but it was like Noah and the ark, and there, the story that I remember she told us that the ark was found. It was found in Russia or something. I've never seen that again, but she read something, and she'd read all about psychic stuff and Edgar Cayce and ghosts, and so we had this kind of melting pot where we talked a lot about supernatural stuff and the great stories of the Bible, and Jesus casting out demons. My family believed in demons, so if you believe in the demon, how can you not believe in the Lord, right? And I know my mother was a believer, so it's not that she stayed away because of this guilt thing. Doesn't make any sense to me. But so I grew up there, and then was unchurched basically, met and married a man, still married to him, blessed with a wonderful husband, thank you, Lord. A cradle Christian, grew up Lutheran, and we got married. We didn't go to church at first, but then once we had a child, he's like, I want to go back, and this is important to me. So I started going with him just because I wanted to be a good wife and partner and a good mother. And you know how God works. You sit there and you hear the word, and the word gets into your heart. Right. And Jesus gets into your heart. Right. And so I feel like I long story, right? Because I'm a storyteller, I guess that I always have to tell all the details.
That's okay.
But
we'll take the details.
I just felt like as the time passed, and I'm writing these books, and my books all do have a strong component of good and evil in them already. I just felt like I would want to explore my faith more overtly in my work that I share with people, when I share with humanity. And then at the same time, people kept talking about the books Twilight, the Twilight series. Did anybody read any of the Twilights? Okay. And so, including a really good friend that I'd had from high school, and she was in my wedding, so I said, okay, I'm going to read one. And I read the first Twilight, and it was a very enjoyable book. And then I started the second one, and I kept feeling this thing about this young girl was willing to give up her soul for a guy. And that whole theme, wasn't the vampire thing, that it was the idea, when young women are so, not culpable, they're, what's the word? Not sensitive.
Susceptible.
Susceptible. Thank you.
Mhm.
Susceptible to messages, and that, to give up your soul for a guy, and I just did. So then I started getting this idea for a series about angels, kind of the watchers from the Bible. That intrigued me. Some of the, like the idea of the watchers sent down, and then they started cavorting with humans, and they fell to sin, and what their role would be today. But anyway, long story. That was all the things that kind of influenced me.
Okay. All right. Before we leave this topic, what advice would you give new writers?
Oh, new writers. My advice is to believe in yourself, to read widely in whatever it is that you want to write, whatever genre. And since this is a Christian group, you probably want to be Christian based, but there's romance, there's mystery, there's suspense, there's all, forms or genres of fiction that can be Christian themed. So read widely in that, and then work hard. Learn from your mistakes.
Oh, wait, let's get the mic.
I want to ask, how, were there periods of time where, you had, a block where, you'll start writing, you'll have, this full force, you're able to write, maybe 3 or 4 pages, or more, and then you get just, this, steady, where it's, nothing is, coming through? How did you motivate yourself to keep pushing?
Okay, great question. Because the truth, I get those all the time still. So I've had to you have to analyze it, and I think that what happens is if you get, because I'll do this, I get a spurt of writing. I'll write, maybe I'll write a chapter, I'll write a scene, and then I don't know what comes next, and I'm completely stuck because it's almost like my creative self, my brain has figured out to a certain part of the story. And then what I'm hitting is the closed door. The door is closed. That's the way I think of it. And then you just have to figure out what comes next. That's the only problem. It's your creative self doesn't know what comes next, and you have to figure it out. So, the way to figure it out is to just think about it. Think about your story. Think about your characters. Let them start talking to you. Do you have a synopsis? Do you have kind of a basic story idea?
I'm writing a memoir. So I'll have high peak. I'm writing a memoir, so I'll have high peaks where I'm able to express things, especially when the Holy Spirit is downloading, and then there's times where I just get really steady, especially if it was something very heavy that I'm talking about, and it's once I release it, because I'm remembering what happened, I kind of take a break from it, and then it's but I want to go back into it, and I just don't have the motivation because I'm it's still, I don't know if I'm still in the healing process of it. Maybe that's what it is, but it's just, and I've been writing this for 2 years now, so I'm just trying to keep myself motivated to keep going.
I think that you should be kind to yourself, and I think since you've been writing it and you have had these peaks and these, kind of unleashing some of these dark things that happen, I think that you just need that little time to rest and heal, and I believe that you are still processing it. You're processing how you're going to move forward with it. So be kind to yourself. Don't let it stop you. Don't let it weigh you down. Could be, could be the evil one wanting to stop you from speaking out too. So just don't angst it. Don't worry about it. Let it go. Relax, and it'll just keep coming. In 2 years into writing a memoir, that's not too long. Not at all. Not at all. I think you should be really proud of what you're doing.
Over here.
It's awesome.
Over here.
I don't know you, but I went through a very bad tragedy. 2 years ago, I lost a husband and a son, and God had birthed me with something that is God. when they said that I wasn't going to make it or they said I was going to lose my mind, when I tell you, God have remarkably changed my whole life. I did a seminar 2 weeks ago, I think, in here, and it was about worship. Through my pain, I worship Him. I didn't give up because I said, God, you knew this. You knew this because you said you knew the beginning and the end. So you knew I was going to go through all this. This was a husband I had for 41 years. 41 years. But I made it. And I said, oh, God. And through the tragedy, it was my son that killed his dad. And my son stabbed me 3 times. And see, and now I'm walking. And now God is telling me, your story need to be told. Now He's telling me, and I'm writing. Because some people do not come out of pain like that. And I walked out, but He guided me out. When I wanted to give up, I didn't give up. I said, okay, God, you got to push me because you knew this happened to me. Because God said what? He knew it all, the beginning and the end. Mm-hmm. So whatever you have inside of you, it will be birthed. But see, you got to say, let His will be done inside of you so it can come out. Because I wouldn't think I would be standing here today saying, Lord, thank you, because He kept my life, He kept me. But I kept pressing. I said, okay, God, your will be done. See, we have to walk believing that He can take us farther than our eyes can see and our ears can hear.
Well, let me tell you something, Tanisha, because I read your first chapter that you sent me, and you've really got a good start. There are several dramatic things in there that would make a great opening. It's just you need to refine it, but you have a good story going, and it was interesting. So let me encourage you just to go back. And a friend of mine told me one time she was writing The Last Chocolate. It was really a play, and she was stuck. So I said, well, Rebecca, go get a box of chocolates and put them by your computer. And she said, why? I said, just do it. And she got back with me later, and she said, those chocolates spoke to me.
They always speak to me.
So maybe you might need to get something from your past or something from that time period you're writing by and just set it by your computer. And it might jog your memory a little bit or help you to go on with it. But I'd really like to encourage you to keep that going because it was a good chat. It was interesting. You needed a little better organization, but all that stuff can wait. That can wait. You can do that later. Once you get it on paper. There's some chairs up front. We got 2, 3 over here.
I would. Don't worry about at this stage. I wouldn't worry about is it good enough. Right. That'll kill it. Don't worry about is it good enough or I don't know the grammar or whatever. How am I going to organize this? What is anybody going to think? At this point, I think it's more important to get your story out because once you have all that, then you can rearrange. You can work in a critique group. You can, you have it then. So don't self-criticize yourself and worry about critique right now. I would just let it go.
Are you having an audio problem?
No, got a question.
Oh, question. I'll give my husband a
Hello. All right, I got 2 questions. One, when they said you were signing books in Japan, were those books that you had rewritten in Japanese then?
No, they the publisher had them translated.
So they were translated.
Translated in Japanese.
Second, one of my favorite authors is a guy named Bill Myers. Okay. He's a Christian author, and I noticed sometimes I'll be reading his book, and it's almost like I don't know if he had a block, like you're talking about, like a stop or something, but it seems like for instance, he had one where 2 vehicles, there's a man and a lady, 2 vehicles go to a city, and then they came back in 1 vehicle. And I said, well, what happened to the other vehicle? Another time he's talking about a guy having I think it was, I want to say a rifle. So all through these service pages, guys found a rifle, is carrying a rifle, and all of a sudden, like 5, 6 pages later, he fires a shotgun. And I said, well, wait a second, what happened to the rifle that he had? So when you guys have these blocks, is this possibly what's, like in other words, if you have a block and you come back 5 days later and you got something that you forgot what you've written before, or what? That's my question, though.
That's a great question. It totally could happen, but in the end, an editor is supposed to catch that. Either you edit yourself, and then if you've sold to a publisher, it goes through the editorial process. So they should have caught that. I mean, but I've done that. I'll have to go back and reread to remember people's names, like Uncle so and so. All of a sudden, it'll change 3 times while I'm writing the book.
Uncle so and so's cloning himself.
Right.
Is that due to the block though? Do you stop, come back, stop, come back?
It could be. It could be also that, you know, if it takes a year to write a book, that's a lot of time. Like for me, it takes about a year. A lot of time to stretch out where maybe Uncle Drew doesn't show up for 50 pages, you know, and then you write him again and you think he's, you know, Uncle Jack, you know. So.
No, there's just some seats up here when people come in. That if you want to direct them up to the front, they can sit up close to the front. Another question. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I'm not a writer, so I'm out of my element with all you precious people. This is going to be difficult for me. My son loved God, loved writing, loved the guitar. That's where you'd find him. Wrote at least 2 that he got completed. One still in the computer. I can't get it out. It was an old computer. And unfortunately, I haven't had the courage to even throw the computer away because I know it's in there. I know he wants it published. Where do I start? Where do I go? Who do I talk to?
You're in a good place. You just keep coming back, and we will do what we can to help you to get that out and get it edited and see what we can do. It's really difficult to get an agent and a publisher today, but you know, even if we have to go the self-publishing route, we just keep coming back. We will help you. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, please say your questions on the mic. My husband was over there talking. He wasn't on the mic.
The question that I have is, how did you decide on your publisher?
Oh, that's a good question. Well,
And you sent it to like 20 publishers, and then finally the one that came back, or
right?
is it?
Yeah,
Pretty much, yeah.
Bill.
It's like,
We don't decide on nothing.
It's like, yes, somebody picked me.
not often are people like having auctions for their books, you know. But you know, you would send it. You wouldn't just scattershot send it. You maybe, you know, have read stuff that the publisher's known for. So if they're known for these kind of fiction books, you probably rank the ones you want and hope you get any. But you know, if you get one of your top publishers, you're really excited. Yeah.
And what was your you went self-publishing first, right?
No, I went traditional publishing first, and then so I just did some self-publishing.
Okay. And why did you make the change?
Okay.
I was going to
Great
get to that a little bit later. Can we hold on that one?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's move to the craft of writing because that's where we're going right now, but I want to ask Erica this question with a little background. In 2012, I filmed Robin Wells, whom I think you know.
Oh, I love Robin.
She was promoting her latest release, Still the One. And this is a quote from that video because I went back and looked it up. It's still online in my YouTube channel. Robin said, "Writing is a spiritual process. Your subconscious works on it when you are not at the computer. Sometimes I don't know where things come from. Towards the end of the book is when I figure out what I was really writing about. I think that God works through the art helping the writer to create. The creator is the source of all creation." I was not expecting that from a romance writer.
Right.
Okay. She described my experience when I was writing Bible studies. Sometimes I didn't know what I was writing until I got to the end. We would expect God's influence in writing Bible studies, not so much if you're writing for entertainment. Then in 2014, I filmed you at the North Shore Guild, if you remember going there. And you talked about getting letters from people who say your books have helped them in some way. And you referenced one man who read Watch Me Die and decided to check himself into rehab because he didn't want to die anymore. My thoughts about the spiritual aspect of writing has changed over the years. I would like you to finish this sentence. What is writing?
Writing is, it's from God. It's a spiritual endeavor. It is. I mean, Robin's right. Where do we get our gifts from? We're gifted by the Creator, by the
Right.
Spirit.
Right.
Right. So it's a spiritual endeavor, and you have a message. And romance gets a bad rap. They do. I mean, romance is about love. Okay,
Right.
there's some sex.
And
hello.
and that's what she said. She's writing about the redeeming power of love. Well, what is God?
Right.
His love
He's the
redeemed
Redeemer.
us all.
Right,
He
exactly.
redeemed us.
We love because He first loved us.
Right.
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 So.
Okay, here's another one for you.
Okay.
Somebody else you know. Pamela, I know a lot of people you know.
Yeah.
Pamela Ewing told me when she gets an idea for a book, she will think about it for as long as a year. Then she will write the story without concern for formatting and grammar. She called it stream of consciousness. And that's usually what I tell people. That's what I told you to do. Just get it on paper. After she gets the story on paper, then she starts editing, making it readable. So I'd like you, Erica, to walk through your process from the time you get that idea and the process you go to until you know your manuscript is ready for publishing.
Okay.
So walk us
Yeah.
through that.
And I will say with a caveat that it has changed over the years. I have been doing this for so long. My first book came out in 1988, so it has changed. I used to do a really long synopsis, which is a narrative outline of the book. I had young children, so it was like creating this very detailed roadmap that I could follow. With Katrina, my process changed, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about my current process.
Okay.
After Katrina, it was time to start another book, and we would sit on the porch, my husband and I. Of course, there was the Times-Picayune was delivering. We had no electricity, but they were delivering. And I remember reading about the refrigerator graveyards, and how they called them the refrigerator graveyards. It was all the old refrigerators, but they had to be cleaned out. They had toxic materials, so the EPA had to open them. I got an idea for a story. What if they opened them up and found a serial killer's, and opened one of them and found the trophies of a serial killer? Okay, and the questions that would arise from that. I tell you that only because, I got this story idea, and so my normal way of working would be to start brainstorming on paper. I'd take yellow legal tablets and just write. Just anything that came in, just write, maybe for 2 or 3 weeks, anything that popped to my head. And then as I did that, the stuff that was good kept coming back, and the stuff that was just, kind of fell to the side. So all of a sudden I'd be like, oh yeah, there's this. And then I'd write this, start building this story plan. With this refrigerator graveyard and Katrina and sitting on the porch, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I kept trying to do this long outline, and something within me kept stopping me. It just was like I couldn't bring myself to do it. It was like, you just ready to write this book. And so I did. So now my process is and it involves these closed doors that I was talking about too. My process is I get an idea, I do the brainstorming still, just kind of enough. I do the brainstorming on paper. I know who the characters are, the setting, the background. Depending on what type of story it is, sometimes I start with the crime. Suspense, mystery will start often with the crime, and then you build your characters around the crime, because it all has to do this together. And then I have to give my editor just, like 10 pages. So instead of doing 55 or 60 page outline, I send her 7 to 12, 7 to 11 for her to look at. So it's kind of skimpy, it's like, this is the highlight. It's a story about a woman who, and then I tell a little about her background, and then what's happening in the story. So you don't get a lot of detail. From there, if she accepts it, then I start writing. And what I'll do is usually I know who those characters are. I kind of know the beginning, so I'll be able to get a prologue, a first chapter, maybe a second chapter, and then bam-o. That bam-o, the door shuts, right? And then I have to stop and I have to like reassess and kind of figure out and look at my notes and just kind of let my creative brain do the work, or let the spirit do the work. I like that. I'm changing my tune here. And then I'll know where I'm going for a while. Maybe I know where I'm going for 40 pages, and then door shuts again. I don't know where I'm going, and I have to go from there. Recently, in fact, I brought a couple of a recent book titled The First Wife, and that book just gave me fits. It took almost 2 years to write, which is double my usual time. I had to keep getting extensions. Couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. Kept writing and rewriting. But in terms of this question, a friend told me about a book called Save the Cat. It's a screenwriting book. I don't know, have you heard of it? Save the Cat?
It sounds vaguely familiar, yeah.
Awesome. So she's having so much trouble. I heard this somebody speak on this book. Give it a try. So I bought it, I looked at it, and it's just awesome. So I recommended it. It's for screenwriting, but he lays out the beats of a story. When the theme should be expressed, what the catalyst is, when the story breaks into the second act and so forth. And so I looked at it and I was like, oh my gosh, you know what? I already do that. I was thinking about other books I'd written and where the catalyst and what the different things were. And looking at that made me realize that this new book, things weren't in the right order. It was it's like, wait a minute, no, that doesn't make sense. I need a big moment here and I don't have one. That's, a stumbling block. There were some other stumbling blocks, but that doesn't have to do with the process so much. And it really works. So now I've thrown that book into my process also. So when I get my idea, I'll also get out the little note cards. He says write things on note cards, and I'll write things on note cards, this scene, that scene, catalyst, theme, and I kind of lay them all out. That's kind of my roadmap. Instead of 60 narrative pages now, I have those cards. So I really recommend them. Then I write and write and write. I'll write, and a lot of times one of the ways after I hit a wall, I move forward is I go back and read everything I've already written of that story. I'll go back and read, and then I can edit a little as I go, but it will refresh me, because if you're writing just a few pages a day, as time goes by, you kind of forget sometimes. Right. Where was I going? Because you're in the moment, you're in the pages, So I'll go back, I'll reread, I'll move forward. I reread it all once, make changes, then I read it all again to clean it up, and then I usually send it off to editor or agent, or both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask you how long it takes you to write a book, but I gathered it takes you about a year.
About a
because
year.
You said it took you double that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Are any of your characters based on people you know or met? And have you ever upset anyone who thought that character was me and I didn't like it?
No, I've never had that happen. But when we first moved to the North Shore, to Mandeville, apparently the people we bought the house from said, "Oh, the wife is a writer." And so everybody was like, "Oh no, she's going to be writing about us. She's going to put us in books." So they were a little nervous about all that. But I've never had anybody say, "Oh, that was me." Okay. And in terms of writing people inspire me. Yeah. But I've never actually written a person. You know what I mean? It's like it's not a person. Someone will inspire me. Maybe you're inspiring me now today. It's like that she will inspire me to write a character who's writing a memoir, and and I take bits and pieces of people instead of people themselves.
And hide them carefully. Huh?
Yeah, I'm looking around the room.
Where's the mic? Oop, over here. I should have gave that to someone else. You got a brace on your leg. Got you hobbling all over the place.
Hello. My question goes back to you're talking about using the cards, like the 3x5 cards or something like that. I read a book. It sounds similar to maybe what you did. talked about outlining and using cards because they're easy to change one small part and replace.
Right, move them
But
around.
the question I have is, I've done some nonfiction writing, which it has to be logical and linear. Novels are a lot different than that. But one of the things that he was talking about is don't never leave a string dangling. Which what he was talking about was, if you have a ship that's sinking and bodies go in the water, nobody cares. They're just bodies going in the water. But if you have a character, even if it's a minor character that they become interested in some way, the little boy goes in the water, and then you go on with the hero or the heroine or whatever, saving people and doing this, but they're wondering what happened to the little boy. And they said, even if you don't come back right then, even if it's 2 or 3 chapters later, he says, you better tell them what happened to the little boy. So he was saying, use these cards to keep a string going in your mind, that you know that there's something at the end of that string that you got to go back to and close that bit of the story out. And he said he really liked the 3x5 cards that he kind of discovered himself, his writing. That helped him not to leave things dangling and leave questions unanswered when he was writing. Because what he said is, you get to the end of the book, in his case, and he said he would always remember to wrap up the big things, the big storylines. But he said the way he would write, he would always have these little subplots and subplots and little storylines. And he said inevitably, if he didn't close one of them out, somebody would write him and tell him what happened to the little boy. So he said he used those 3x5 cards to create these strings, so that even little things he would remember to go back, and not even always wait till the end of the book. Sometimes he would close out that string or storyline, maybe a chapter, maybe 3 pages later, maybe 2 chapters later. But he always remembered to go back. He said, and the reason I thought about that was because suspense. He said he liked to create suspense throughout the book, but alleviate some of the suspense as he went along, and then create new suspense lines. And he used the 3x5 cards to do that. And I wondered if, as a suspense writer, you did that.
Yeah, that's excellent. It's excellent advice, because you can leave something dangling like that.
Betty,
it was very good
I don't know
advice.
who had their hand up
So I
first.
do that.
Go ahead. Yeah, take a pick.
We're talking about 3x5 cards. I don't use those, but behind every short story that I write, I've always got a bunch of dangling information, so that I don't forget something. I'll write a bunch of names down of the characters that are in the group, or I'll write, well, I've got to finish this out before it's over with, but I'm not going to do it right now. Or sometimes I'll have a flash will come to me, and I'll think, in the future, I want to do this, and I'll write a whole scene, and then I'll just plug it in as it comes up. But I always keep that on the same file that I have my stories on.
Okay, that's smart.
Betty has a question.
Okay, I wanted to ask if every book that you write is if you use the same pattern. And you said it takes you about a year, that time. Because I find that I'm living in that story, and I can't leave it. I may stay up all night. So there must be something wrong with me. I'm not that organized. But I can't, if I start it, it's all there at one time. And I have to continue with that, because I just get in that story and you just almost can't get me out of it.
Right.
So I wondered if you have periods of time where it's like that for you, and you've had to, because you're doing it as a professional job, you have to be organized, and you've made that. Has that been a follow-on that's come to you because of necessity to be on a routine where you have to do things in a routine way?
Okay, that's a great question. And were you talking in reference to reading? You might read all night, or writing? Writing.
When I start the story, I have to stay with it.
Okay.
My first one I wrote in 3 months, and I almost all that I was at it all the time.
Okay. That's a great question. Okay. Yeah, I find that I had to be organized and treat it more like a job. I mean, Stephen King talks about how he has his writing room, and he goes in there and he closes the door, and nobody's allowed disturb him. You know, he's got kids, he's got a wife, but they're not to disturb him. With my life, I didn't have that. I had to stop to go get kids from school. You know, I have a husband and a life, and as some writers do that though, they will hole up and they will work on their story, and they'll just and it's. I do some writing retreats actually with Robin Wells and another author. We do them about 2 or 3 times a year, where we'll go someplace for a week and the 3 of us just write. That's all we do. We just kind of write, we break to eat, we take walks separately to recharge and think about the story. And I do so much more, so many more pages. It's insane. So it's.
I know that you have to be inspired to do this. So how do you get all the inspiration for a book? You have an editor that you must satisfy their needs, and so how do they give you ideas, or do you get your inspiration from just life yourself?
Okay.
How does that come to you?
Okay. I definitely get ideas from life itself. I think you mentioned this when you were introducing me. I realized I have what I call the dark gift, and that's this thing where I can take just an ordinary, everyday occurrence and in my mind just spin it into a worst case scenario. It's like you're driving to pick up your child from preschool, and my mind will be like, what if he's not there? What if? It's that, and all of a sudden my mind is off and running, and I'm talking to I'm seeing the scene, and I'm talking to the teachers, and what do you mean, he's not here? And, I can just do that, and I call that the dark gift. So I do that with just anything that could happen.
So you do have to have a natural ability to fantasize and imagine things in order to be a really good writer.
I think you do. You have to
have that ability to set aside real life and go on a fantasy trip.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about publishers and agents. Oh, I'm sorry, we have another question.
Oh, yes, thank you.
The question I have is, when you write in the book, do you get all of your information together and then you come up with your title, or do you start with the title first and go into the info? How do you approach that?
How do I approach that? That's a great question, because titles are so important, and they're so important to writers, and they're so important to book buyers, readers. So I do it both ways. Sometimes a title just comes to me. I've had ones that the title comes to me and I write a story to match the title, which is kind of bizarre, but I've done it that way. Other times I'm working on the idea and the title comes, and sometimes it's just a struggle. I mean, it's marketing gets in your head, or the editor says, sometimes I have a title I am completely married to, and the editor's like, no, not going to sell. We don't like that. So, and then you have to change it, but that's a great question.
Okay, we're going to talk, one more. Okay, one more question, then we're going to move on to talking about agents and publishers.
Well, I guess I'm non-traditional because I'm all over the place. I've been writing this one book for 12 years.
Wow.
And because it's a poem, and then why I wrote it on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not in a plot.
Okay.
So I guess that's why I thought I needed help. So that's why I'm here.
Okay. Is there anything like it out there that you've read? I mean,
no, I'm kind of coming up with my own concept of what I wanted to get across and why I'm writing this poem. And I've done it, and actually I won an award for one of the poems, but that was like years ago.
Right.
And so now I'm retired and trying to get it done, so that's why
That's awesome.
email you.
The lady that's holding your microphone has written 12 books of poetry. You might want to get together and chat. Okay, all right. Yeah, I sent her your information.
Come in April, but
okay, yes, I remember you. Okay, well, this is
I
the
got
lady.
back in town, so
This
I'm here.
is the lady you wanted to spend some time
fantastic. Yeah, yeah.
with. Okay, let's talk a little bit about publishers and agents. First of all, how do you get an agent?
Ah. Well, you find agents that publish what you're trying to write and what you're trying to publish, and then you submit query letters to them. I'm sure this group can talk about query letters, your critique group, or
Yeah, we will eventually. Yeah, we'll get
query letters, and you can look online. Query letter is basically an introduction to an agent about who you are and what you've written, and then the question: would you like to see the manuscript?
Is that how you got your first agent?
Yes.
Just with a query letter?
Just with a query letter.
Yeah, I could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are books written to tell
Yeah, there are whole
Yeah.
books about it. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
There are. Yes.
Wait for the microphone, people. And let Ingrid hold it, because sometimes your hand's drifting away and my husband's waving at me. He can't pick up your voice. So just let Ingrid hang on to it. Okay.
Great idea.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, publishers. In your experience, what do publishers want from their writers? What do they expect? What do they want?
What do they want from their writers? Well, they want a bestseller. They want the magic to happen, right? The money. They're all about the money, money, money. But what do they want? They want authors who are professional, who behave professionally, and to behave professionally, they don't get on social media and say bad things about their editor or the publishing house. They get their work in on time. They listen to criticism. They do what the publisher asks in terms of if it's a radio interview or something. So I think that they want a partner that they can work with, because the best author-editor publisher relationship is when it feels like a partnership.
Okay. And how much marketing do they expect you to do? Because they will do some, but how much do they expect of their writers in terms of marketing?
It's changed so much from when I started. When I started, there was no independent publishing. There was no websites and social media and all that kind of stuff. So the publisher really did everything for you, other than if you did local signings. Usually authors would set up their own local signings. These days, the publishers are very happy to have authors doing a lot of their own advertising online. They really kind of expect you to have a web presence, so you want to if you're just starting writing, it's not too early to have a Facebook and a Twitter and all those social media accounts. And you can just say, oh, I'm starting to write, get in writing groups, online. It's not too early to start a following, even though you're not published yet. So I would say, for just your general, if you're a big bestseller, they do so much. They probably do everything for you, including your website and your handle your Facebook pages and all that kind of stuff. But I would say 80%
of
is
the
author.
marketing is on the author.
Yeah.
Okay. Question over here. Okay.
I can hold it up there. I just won't have to lean over. The question I have has to do with the website thing. Now, if you're already Stephen King and already have a huge following, it's pretty easy to set up a website and you're going to have a following. When you're starting out, though, how do you build that following? Because you have the SEO and stuff like that. You can put in the meta words, the keywords, but that doesn't guarantee that people are going to hit that site. So, what do you know anything that helps people to build their following?
Yeah, I do. I would start with Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I've got a lot of followers on Facebook, and they want you to be you. It's not all about selling. It's just you are who you are. You're shaking your head. You tell your story. You share your life. And people start seeing those and they start following you. So, and then you can do giveaways, you can have contests, you get mailing lists, all of that. So that's a blog, you could start a blog.
Yeah.
That's another good thing to do.
Yeah, and that is one of the reasons I let members blog on our website, because we already have a following.
Right.
So if you just put one out there on WordPress, you might get a few people. It might take you a while, but
Right.
if you blog on our website, we already have a following there, and everything on there automatically goes to the SCW page that's on Facebook. It automatically goes to my Twitter. Overall, more than 1,000 people are going to see your work.
That's awesome.
She just sent me an article that I put on the SCW Guild, and we had a bump, I think, of 100 people logged on because of your article that you gave me. So it helps each other, and one of the reasons I did that is I knew some sci-fi writers that were Christians. They were all unpublished, so they got together and they made a joint website, and they accumulated 100,000 followers. Okay, that'll look really good when you're trying to get, an agent or a publisher, that, I've got 100,000 people I can expose this to. Yeah, it's a platform. Go ahead. Mike.
Well, let me say, can I add one thing before, or else I'll forget. The other thing you can do is get with other authors and blog on their pages.
Yeah.
So that you get each other's, either create a page together, or I could guest blog on your page, and you could guest blog on my page, and so forth.
Well, I opened up a website and I do a blog, and I have a section in there for other authors to submit writing, and but really right now it's about 3 months old, and I have about 60 people a week or so. And all I do is I put on Facebook. I updated my website every Monday, but I don't necessarily have a huge number of people on Facebook that I'm connected with, so maybe I need to be a little more.
You need to be a social butterfly.
But
and we're writers, right? Most of us.
So in other words, if anybody wants to submit any Christian writing, let me know, because I do have a space on there that you can, besides use multiple formats, I guess, or opportunities.
Let me do a little promotion here, because I just told Pastor Roderick, who invited me to teach writing at his Bible college, that I have set a self-imposed deadline to get it done by September so that he can advertise it. But whoever goes through that class, because we are going to start off with writing, and we're going to spend 9 weeks improving it, I will guest blog you on NOLA.com if your writing improves to where that I can. Okay. So you might want to think about that in September. I'll be teaching that class. If you want to take it, you might end up on NOLA.com. And NOLA has millions of readers. They don't all come to the blog, but.
I have a quick question about that. If you publish something on a blog or on a website, how then legally can you publish it elsewhere? Are there any legal implications if it's already been put out there as far as rights to stories?
I'm going to honestly say I don't know. I think you own it.
Yeah.
You own
okay. The book, Finding Faith, I put all of those on NOLA.com's website first, but NOLA wasn't paying me, so NOLA didn't own them.
They didn't buy the rights.
Okay, they don't have the rights to them. So all I had to do was go back and delete them, and I put them in a book. But if they had been paying me, then they would have belonged to the Times-Picayune. I believe Chris Rose did that with articles he wrote, and he self-published a book. But at the end of the day, when he had sold like 60,000 copies and a big New York publisher wanted to pick it up, it wasn't his. Times-Picayune got involved. And I think he said he made enough to buy a new car, and the Times got the rest. Because they paid him to write those stories. Right. They didn't pay me, so it's mine.
Right.
But yeah, I do guest blogging. On NOLA.com. If the writing's comparable, I put yours to release on Mother's Day because it was so perfect on Mother's Day. So, I'll do that for anybody if the writing is, it's got to be the same as the other writing on the blog is all.
Another comment about the social media and the numbers. The new thinking is you don't really need a lot of followers. That sometimes it's better to have a smaller number of ardent followers than 40,000 followers.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Because those ardent followers are going to buy your book.
Exactly.
I mean, in terms of selling and then being, talking about your stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
encouraging.
Yeah, the faithful ones, they will follow you, they will buy your book, and they will tell other people about your book. Bruce Barber is co-founder of Barber Publishing, which he's not there anymore. He went into being an agent, but he said the best marketing there is word of mouth.
It is. Here's one problem that in today's world of publishing with the word of mouth I found.
Okay.
People buy your book or download your book. You know, they buy it, they download it, and it's sitting there with another 150 books, and they don't get to it right away. When authors were publishing like a book a year, you know, they would get that book and they'd been waiting a year. They'd read that book, but now they have all these books. Sometimes, you know, even people who really like my work, who know fans, who bought the book right away, which I'm thankful for, but they can't be word of mouth because they haven't read it yet. You know, it's like, it's sitting there.
Actually,
it's sitting on my bedside.
Actually, I bought 2 books from you last year. I have read one, but I didn't read the other.
Well, thank you for buying them.
Bring the mic over there.
Okay, so obviously you have books on ebook format, right? Do you find that you make less on ebooks than you would on a hard copy book, as far as like percentages or whatever from your publisher?
Yes. Yeah, you do make less through a publisher when you have ebooks. It's pretty pathetic, actually. When I was with Mira Books, I was with Mira Books first, and then St. Martin's Press. But Mira, I mean, I went back and figured it out. I was getting some books I was getting 0.8 cents or something ridiculous overseas, and you know, like 12 cents a copy. And you know, a paperback I would have gotten 48 cents, or you know, a little paperback. So it's like 12 cents, you know, 40. Yeah, but they've leveled it a little more. But the other thing publishers do, depending on the publisher, is you get a percentage. So they might say you get 10% of sales or 15%, right, of what the book sells for. But they give everybody different bargains. Like they sell a big group to Amazon for a lot less money. Right. You know, so all of a sudden you're not getting cover price percentage. You're getting percentage of what they recouped. Right. Yeah. You know,
speaking from a retail perspective, it's like all these hardback copy books that come out, and the publisher wants $25.99 for it. Nobody pays $25.99 for that book, but my discount is based on that $25.99 thing. But you might be sold online or ebook, or you know, one of my competitors at like 10% over cost, and it's like it makes it very difficult for us to say, hey, let's invest a lot in all these new titles and hard copies, right? Because it's very difficult to bring them in. You know, just can't make anything off of it.
That margin's so small.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even with you know, my indie published series that I've done, it's like when you do the print books, like I do the ebooks, but the print books, then they say what percentage you're going to give the bookstore, you know, the distributor in the bookstore. So between the printing costs and giving the bookstore 40%, you know, you're not getting that much money unless you know, if you don't charge $25 for a book, you know, for a hardcover, and $15 for a paperback. It's a conundrum, you know. So, but in the independent publishing, the author gets so much more per copy sold. You know, a lot more.
Let me. We've only got about 30 minutes left, and I want to talk about her Lightkeeper series. So, if we have time after we do that, we'll come back to any more questions that you have. We've got her dry mouthed over here. She's drinking water. First of all, going back to Bill's question, why did you you're such a successful author, why independently publish a series?
Okay. That's a great question. One is my career has been, for the last number of years, in suspense, just kind of straight romantic suspense, romantic thrillers. And I got this idea for this paranormal, supernatural type series, this series about the angels, or the Watchers, you know. I call them light keepers. And I wanted to do it. And my regular publisher did not want to publish it. They said that isn't what my fans want from me. And my agent even shopped the idea around to a few people, and they were like, no, we would want to publish her regular suspense, because You know, they're looking at the bottom line, and they didn't think that my readers were going to come with me. So many authors are talking about independent publishing and how great it is to have control of your work and your career, and that they were making good money. So I thought, well, you know what? This is an opportunity. I really wanted to try it. I really wanted to try it. So it's really been interesting. It's a lot of work. And it has its pros and its cons. I mean, the con part is it's a lot of work that's not writing, that I'm spending time organizing and doing. That isn't what my, I was at a conference recently and they called it your superpower. What's your superpower? Do what your superpower is. Well, I suppose my superpower is supposed to be writing, and here I am uploading and, doing all this stuff. But I'm still really grateful that I'm doing it. Yeah. And the thing is, I can sell a lot less books, but make the same money because
bigger profit margin.
Bigger profit. Instead of getting 12 cents a book for an ebook, I'm getting what? $6?
Yeah.
It's like, or $5, it's like, but it comes with its own stressors. Each comes with stressors. I mean, the stressor when you're with a publisher is they don't do what they promised, or they don't want a certain idea. They don't, they want you to change a title. They want some of the artistic control. So that's stressors with a publisher. So many things are out of your control. But then with self-publishing, the stressors are it's so much work, things go wrong, you have to hire all these professionals. I hire editors and proofreaders and all that, and you have to pay that money up front.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
So-
I just hired a professional editor. He was not cheap.
It's not cheap.
Not cheap.
And y'all, be kind to authors when you read their books and there's mistakes like typos, because I can promise you, I read mine several times. I had a developmental editor this time, a line editor, paid them, and then a proofreader. There's still mistakes. Someone will write me, I found a mistake in your book, and you just want to tear your hair out. You're doing everything you can to make it perfect, but there's no such thing as perfect.
Yeah, the professional I paid, I'm going back and reading, and I'm seeing things.
I know, and you're like,
and I'm like, I paid you how much
I
money?
know,
You
I
couldn't have
know,
got them all out.
But they, that's why many sets of eyes.
Oh, yes, yes. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I've read the first 3 books in the Lightkeeper series, and it's easy to pick out the Christian themes with the full lights, who represent good. The dark bearers represent evil. And then you have the Lost Angels ministry that helps wayward half-lights, the products of lightkeepers in human matings. In book 3, you introduce a wicked little creature that I don't want to say a lot about, but it's not a dark bearer, and he's really bad. Clearly, there are other evil things the lightkeepers must contend with. But then I got to thinking, where does humanity fall? Humanity doesn't appear to fall in either category. You have the half-lights that implies humanity is dark until they mate with a full light. I don't know if that's what you intended. Humanity appears to be the innocent bystander in need of protection from darkness. So where is your concept of humanity in this scheme of good and evil?
My concept is that we are both light and dark, that we all have the light in us, but we have the capacity for darkness. Okay. So that's what the theme is, and that love wins.
Okay,
right.
Love wins.
And that we'll see that more as the series goes on, with Mickey, the main character.
Oh, now that you mentioned, I wanted to ask you, a lot of your books have a very strong female lead. Is that intentional? Is that something the publisher wants you to do, or are you just strong female, so you write about strong females?
Hey, I like strong females. My mom was a strong woman, and yeah.
Okay. Now, when we get down now, we're talking about pure good and pure evil. And you define the Lightkeepers as good, yet in this book, this last book, you have the high council of the Lightkeepers that reminded me of the Sanhedrin in Jesus' day. They were the religious leaders that represented all that is good, and yet they are the ones that conspired to murder Jesus, who did good.
Right.
And in the High Council arrested and charged leaders of the Light Angels ministry with treason for training half-lights to develop and use their abilities. I hope I'm not giving away too much, but the half-lights in your book, to me, would be the Samaritans of Jesus' day. That's what it made me think about, who are the product of Israelites intermarrying with people from other countries. The Israelites despised the Samaritans and had no dealings with them because they wanted to keep their race pure. So what gives the High Council of the Light Keepers the moral high ground as the representation of good?
Well, it's kind of all a metaphor for humanity, and not just, thematically, biblically, but the idea of race relations, and it's like, how this one doesn't like that one and this one's not good enough and all that, and that it's just the light keepers and the dark bearers, it's all a metaphor for our world, and what's going on in our world and how many things are wrong.
It's kind of like people don't think God is good, and you have people that worship the devil who thinks he's better than God, and things of that nature. And when I was reading it, I also got to thinking, well, in your world, Jesus would be a half-light because he was the product of God and man. He had the weakness of humanity to be tempted, but the strength of a God not to yield to that temptation.
Right. Yeah.
So, do we have a Messiah in your series? Are they going to be a full light or a half light?
I'm not going to tell that.
You don't have to tell us the name. Because I'm kind of picking, well, maybe it's that one's going to be the Messiah. Maybe it's, this baby's on the way. Maybe that one, I'm trying to pick it out,
Well, I will say this. The books are a countdown. So it started at the final 7. The last book of the series, the title is The Chosen One.
Ah, okay. So there is a Messiah coming, huh?
Counting down. Yep.
So when you're writing good, define good. What qualities do you give to your characters that make them good?
They're heroic. They're loyal. They heroic and loyal. They stand up for what's right. Not that it isn't that they don't make mistakes or do bad things, but they take the moral high ground.
Okay. And how do you define evil? What makes your evil characters truly evil?
They thirst for destruction and chaos, and they want to reap sadness and ugliness and pain.
Okay. One last question, and then we're going to go back to you for any other questions that you might have that we didn't get to. Does good always win, or does that only happen in fiction?
Oh, you're asking me that? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think absolutely. I think good always wins. I think that love wins, and that at the end of the day, that God will be victorious. So anything bad that happens in this world, God finds a way to use it toward the good of his world and his people. So this beautiful lady here talking about the tragedy in her life and what she's doing through her writing and her testimony and her walk every day is living out she is a symbol for, walk and talk in ministry, and a symbol of the good that she can do for others and helping them and spreading the light. She's a light keeper. You're a light keeper.
Light keepers. Okay, I do want to say one thing, and then we're going to get to any questions that we missed. Erica has copies of The Light Keeper to sell if you would like one, but one of her concerns about coming here is that she writes for a secular market, and sometimes her characters use secular language that you may or may not be offended by. So you've just been warned of that before you buy one. I don't want you to go home and say, oh, how dare you, how dare you. You've been warned, but she does have copies if you would like one. Now, if anybody had a question that we didn't get to, now is the time. Okay.
Well, I got several, actually. I've been writing them down.
Get her some more water.
More water.
How do your translations work? I mean, you know, I imagine you have to put some kind of a clause in there saying that you have the right do you get more out of that or less out of that, or how does, you know?
Usually, what happens is I have if either my publisher or my agent will sell the foreign rights. So you know, I'm well known in Poland. You know, and a Polish publisher buys the rights either from my agent if I own them, or from the publisher, and they do the translation, they do the cover, they do everything. I sign my rights away, but they pay me to do it.
Okay. What about a website? How do you set that up? You set that up so that it's compatible and you can refer to it from Facebook and Twitter and all these other things, or you know, where did you go to get your initial website?
Well, I smile because my husband's standing over there, and he owns an advertising marketing firm, and he does all that for me. So there's your answer. He knows all that. And my son's in social media now, so there you go.
There you go.
I need all the help I can get.
Start with a good website, and then everything attaches to it. Your Facebook page, your Instagram, Snapchat, whatever social media you're on, is all part of that connection that refers back to the website.
Where do you get the initial website?
I build them. Yeah. So she's on her third website now, and what happens is every few years, over coffee in the morning, it's, you know, I was thinking. Oh.
It's bad when a writer starts
Let
thinking.
me tell you, WordPress.
Yeah,
WordPress. You can set it up for free. It's a blog, but you can set a page to be the first page. Pin it to the top, and it'll work like a website. So you might want to look up WordPress.
You can simply go to GoDaddy to buy URLs.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll walk you through it. So you just you type in, you look up, you find your URL, and I think they're about $15 a year.
It's cheap. Yeah.
And well, I'll try and get a speaker here to address that subject for people who want to open a website. And if you join the guild, you can blog on our website to get yourself started. If you don't know how to set up a website, you can be on ours if you're a member. Betty had okay, he's got some more, and then Betty
one
had.
more. That's
okay.
Sorry about that. I was wondering, do you like the ebook better, the ebook version, or the hard copy, and which one does better for you?
In terms of just liking it, I love the hardcovers because they're beautiful. They're like little art objects, you know, and you can hold them and flip the pages and smell them. And, you know, the ease of ebooks are great. You know, you hear about a book, you can just download it. So I just want to go wide in terms of I'll take, you know, I'm in audiobooks, I'm translated, I'm ebooks, I'm paperback, and I'm hardcover. I like them all. You know, because every reader likes different things.
Let's let Betty get hers because she had her hand up. Oh, you forgot your question?
Just real quick, you mentioned GoDaddy and you mentioned WordPress. More and more of the web builders, they choose a platform, and WordPress is kind of like a platform. And a lot of times, if you're looking for a specific type of web page to build, you may look for the WordPress platform to make sure they're using it. But they all offer different things, and some of them are geared towards bloggers, and some are geared towards people selling things commercially, and some of them are kind of a mix. So you may want to pull up web builders and do some research on that and figure out what suits you best.
And I'd just like to add that having worked with me for so many years, Nathan is deciding his company's going to open up an arm to work with self-publishing authors where they do the. Yeah.
Oh, that's
so,
interesting.
Yeah, he's working with another author right now already, a lawyer, and me.
Well, y'all might want to give us some more information about that.
Yeah, he can come and tell you about it.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions? Over here.
Yeah, my question is, I heard you mention the publisher and the agent. So what's actually the difference between the two?
Oh, okay. An agent is my representative. So he represents me, and he's like my go-between between me and my publisher. He does the deal for me. He'll negotiate monies and I have a problem, instead of me having to be a bad guy and go complain to my publisher, I complain to him, and then he goes to them, you know, and he has contacts, you know, they know who to sell to, what kind of, how to negotiate the contracts, what we can ask for, what we can't ask for, and it takes it out of the author's hands then. And then you pay him, he gets a commission. So everything I make, he gets 15% of. And then he would sell to a publisher who prints books, who's a publisher who publishes and prints. And
So that's something you highly recommend to,
Yes.
to an agent?
yes.
'Cause I wrote my first book 2 years ago. I went straight to a publisher coming out of Dallas,
Uh-huh.
and I hadn't been that pleased with it, you know, but
Okay.
that's why I was seeking info on. It's better to have an agent. 'Cause my book is over here now. I wrote a book
Okay.
called entitled How to Be Married and Happy.
Okay. Ooh,
And so I
nice.
want to find out if it's better to go through an agent than through a publishing company. I went straight to a publishing company. But I didn't find it being as
Find it.
effective as I thought.
Yeah, a lot of big publishers, in fact, the majority won't take stuff from unpublished people. I mean, without an agent. Yeah, you have to go through an agent. They require that.
I'm going to work on trying to get an agent here next year. It's just I got to get some money for an airline ticket. So if more people would pay the membership fee, would have more money to do stuff.
So if I'm understanding right, when you went through self-publishing, that's you're nixing the agent and you're nixing the publisher. You're doing everything.
A lot of authors do that. I kept my agent because their company has a self-publishing arm where they do marketing and stuff for you as well. And he does sell all my foreign rights. So they have a foreign rights department. So their people and an audio, they do that.
You remembered your question?
When you do your self-publishing and you have to do the whole thing, the formatting, the setup, and all of it, you've nixed them all, but you really have to work hard.
Yes.
It's,
Yes, you do.
It's not a simple, easy job.
Right.
No, it's not.
No, it's not a simple job.
Not easy at all.
I really recommend beginning authors go the traditional route to start because there are advantages. A big publisher gives you a platform right away, their platform. They get you into bookstores. They provide the editorial service, and you learn stuff. I mean, I really learned a lot along the way. But if you have a project that you believe in and you haven't gotten a publisher to pick it up, I totally do support the idea of self-publishing.
Could you say it again? The last.
If you have a project you really believe in and you haven't gotten a publisher to take it, I do believe in going ahead and self-publishing then. Just do it right. Hire editors, hire professional cover artists, do it the right way.
We exhausted our questions.